Hi, my name's Lynn and today I'm going to demonstrate how to make these scarves that I created. In 4 simple steps, you can make it as well by creating the stencils, transferring the design onto the fabric, printing the scrolls and making the tassels and embroidering. Everything can be found in this kit. Let's get started. Step 1 is to make the stencils. In your kit you will find the stencil sheet. So select which size you're going to do and start cutting them out. On there. Now once you've cut it out, holding it firmly, simply trace around your shape. You can actually use pins to hold it in place, the paper design, but you don't want to actually mark the foam stencil too much because that can actually interfere with your printing later on. Design is traced, then simply cut it out. Now we're transferring our stencil shape onto the backing plastic with your craft glue, which you will find in the kit. Make sure that you glue the entire surface of the foam sheet that is cut out in your design. It's important to cover it all with glue so that the paint, once you start printing, doesn't get underneath the stencil. Press it on firmly. And there you have your first stencil. So that same process is repeated for each size of the design in the autumn swirls. Step 2 in our autumn swirl scarf. What I'm going to show you now is a really good example of a technique that can use for transferring any design from a scale design to enlarge it to the size you want. So basically when you get your design, draw a grid onto it, so basically divide it evenly. The scale design is found in the kit. And it's actually marked how you can divide it into sections, even segments. So once you have your grid drawn up on your small scale design, we move into a sheet the larger size. In the kit, there's a blank piece of paper the size of your muslin scarf. On that piece of paper, you draw in to scale the same grid. You can transfer that grid square into that shape. Large design is in here. That swirl, you can see, is here. And then there's a couple of other areas, design, which is the small scroll, that you can transfer. So you can move on to the second grid. So you repeat the process in each grid section, from the third scale design to the large scale section. Once you've penciled in the design areas, then you can transfer it into a darker line, which you'll be able to see when the muslin is placed. Don't need to do a continuous line, just the dash is fine. So this is the overall layout for our scarf. Now that we have the scaled design enlarged and on the backing sheet, we can transfer it to the muslin. And I love working with muslin. It's such an interesting fabric. It looks simple now, but when it's washed, the way it shrinks up, gets density and gets so much texture. To complete step 2, we're laying the muslin over this full scale design sheet. See, it's great because you can see straight through the sheer muslin to trace off your design. Try and position your muslin exactly on the border of the fabric, which is actually called the selvage that runs down the length, on the edge of your design print. So now, with an invisible marker, you can start gently tracing the design in. Now with these markers, once you actually wash your scarf in water, the purple texture or the purple marker will disappear. So I'm not using a laundry marker, but a vanishing pen. You can see that I can actually move the design quite easily because it's still, you actually have traced sections of it so you know the position of it. So even if you have to stop and start and come back to it, it still works. Okay, and continue tracing your design. we've already got our design laid out. So now it's just up to applying the paint. The first thing is to decide what colour paint you're going to put on what size design. That's totally up to you. In your kit, you will have your paint pots and your brushes. You also have the stencils that you've already made. So today I'm actually going to use the green for my larger shape. Just with the brush, just give your paint a little bit of a stir because the colours will have settled, and especially the metallic pigments sink to the bottom. So simply with your brush, apply your paint to the stencil. The first layer you will find actually gets absorbed into the foam, but it's good to put a quick coating all the way around on your stencil. Just painting it on. You can see some spots where I've actually got onto the plastic backing, but it's actually okay. So I've covered the entire stencil now. A quick second layer to make sure you get your coverage. Now, if you're feeling a little bit nervous, it can be quite a good idea just to test your print on a scrap of fabric. Just so you get a feeling for how the stencils work. And actually what sort of look you might prefer. You might prefer a softer print or actually more dense print. And obviously if you want it more dense, then you're applying more paint to your stencil before you stamp it on. Let's have a go. Now you have the number of the design positioned there, and you can position the centre of your scroll on the number, and then you know that it's actually in the right position. Simply push it down, hold it, and the great thing about the transparent backing is that you can see where the stencil is, and carefully peel it off. First scroll. So you can reapply the paint after the first one, or if you want your designs to be softer, after a little while the paint does build up and you don't need to apply it after every stamp. So reprint again. A good tip before you actually move the design along, so that the paint doesn't smudge on anything, is just give it a quick blow over with the hairdryer. It actually dries very, very quickly. That should be enough to dry those areas off, and we can move on. Step 4. Now we actually get to put the embroidery on them. A really simple way to embroider this is just do a basic running stitch. Just following your design, basically under over, do your stitches about 5mm in size. It's very quick, you can do several stitches on the one pull through the thread. Remember your muslin is going to shrink, so you actually want your stitches to be quite tight, even to the point where your muslin puckers and bubbles. Can you see that? And again, when it's washed, you're getting more texture, a little bit more bubbling. And you could even really tighten it up so you end up with a lovely bubble like that. You'd be surprised what it looks like when it's washed. So all I'm doing here is laying it on, doing a double stitch to secure it. 2 or 3 is actually, they call it a double stitch, but maybe you could call it a triple, just to make it secure. This is the part where you get creative. The organza squares are not marked on the 3rd scale design. You just get to position them where you think there might be a bit of a gap. We've done the printing, the embroidery and the tassels. So let's finish off the ends. So you can see how once it's washed, the muslin contracts and the embroidery designs you put on it shrink and the design pulls tight. You can see how I've done the fringing. So you can either do a long tassel like this or a long fringing, or you can actually do just a short 2.5 centimetre fringing. This is actually about 12 to 15 centimetres of pulling or drawing threads out of the muslin, and then it has to be knotted before it's washed. I do like the effect. If you've got the time, you can finish it off this way. Or your choice, a much quicker choice, is to actually do just a simple frayed edge. That's 2.5 centimetres of drawn thread. Our scarf that we finished putting the organza squares on. Now to create the tassels, down the selvage of the fabric, do a little snip, not cutting the selvage, but right beside it. And snip up to about your 2.5. You do that on both sides of the scarf. From the centre, select 2 threads at a time, draw them out. Hold your selvage, pull from that end, hold your selvage and pull from that end. You probably will be tempted to take more than 2 threads. If you do that, you try and pull down, it doesn't work. See, it snags and it tangles. So just 2 threads at a time I find seem to work. Hold the selvage, pull, pull from the other side. So I find that technique much faster, going from the centre, pulling from side to side. Holding your selvage on that side, and holding your selvage on that side, and it'll pull through. So once you've actually drawn about 2.5 centimetres of threads, this can actually be a finished edge on your scarf. When it's washed, it'll sort of fluff, slightly tangle together, and looks great. If your alternative to that is the instant spaghetti, it'll take a lot longer to draw the threads, but I think you'll agree, it looks great. So just on this piece of fabric, I will show you some examples of how, once you have drawn all the threads, how you can actually turn it into a knotted tassel. Draw your threads out to your length of about 12 centimetres. Cluster them then in groups of 1.5 centimetres and a little twist. Sometimes it's actually, I find it easy to get a needle to divide the sections. Give them a twist. So you can probably do 5 or 6 of those twists at a time. Now, to make that secure so it doesn't keep fraying, is actually knot each one individually. Finger on there, form a loop, so you have your circle, and bring it back through. This is where a needle can actually come in handy too, to use as your tool to pull it through. You want your knot to rest right up where the thread was pulled from and secure it. So let's go to our next twist and we'll have another go. Form your loop, tail over the top, inside, and secure it up to the fabric. That's a simple way of doing a long tassel, and that stays secure then because it's knotted. So you can proceed all the way across a piece of fabric like that. As a final touch, if you want to change your white muslin to beigey warm colour, 5 tea bags to a litre and a half. Dip your scarf in, put a swirl around. But remember, before you dip it in the tea, you have to heat set your paint. You can see that muslin starting to contract. So you can see how the fringing actually starts to contract and knot up once it's been wet. And you can also see the effect of the organza squares that add like little tufts of texture and colour. And we've ended up with this beautiful scarf. So I hope you all enjoy making one, because I certainly love doing it.